Thank you, Josie, for this warm welcome and for all of you for showing up. Innovation for why is what I'm going to be asking. Can you all hear me well through this system? If you go out into Reykjavik and you ask people on the street what is innovation, like we did in the run-up to this event, you will get different answers. Usually they will all be somewhat something, it's always something new, people will tell you, and some will tell you to improve things, so new ways to improve things, which isn't entirely off from a textbook definition of innovation. But you will get a lot of different words together, and you will get a lot of kind of squinting, confused faces as well. So it would be amazing, of course, if we had a very clear definition of innovation now that we are celebrating Innovation Week. And so luckily for us, we have an organization that specializes in that. And that's the International Organization for Standardization, or the ISO. Some people quote Steve Jobs or Elon Musk for what is innovative, but I'm going with the ISO. In the 56,000 ISO 2025 standard, they define innovation as such. It is a, new or changed entity realizing or redistributing value. So there you have it. That's the end of my talk. But actually, it's a really good definition. And what the ISO shines in is not actually in the definitions, but in the footnotes. So I'm going to take you all down to one footnote. This is the key thing, in my opinion, for understanding innovation, and something we have to keep in mind when we talk about innovation. First of all, it's something that is realizing value, but it's also something that's redistributing value. So innovation doesn't only create new value, but it takes value from one place and puts it to another place. Secondly, as we can read in the note, and I find this mind-blowing. Novelty and value are relative to and determined by the perception of the organization and relevant interested parties. So, what this means to me, and I think this is the crux of what I want to communicate today, is that the value that innovation creates is in the eye of the beholder. What's valuable to me is not the same as what's valuable to Bill Gates or Elon Musk or something like that. So it's always relative to who we are speaking to, what the value is. And it's also redistributing value, right? So this is Mókollur. He was the mascot of the 1995 Icelandic men's team in handball. And Mókollur supported our boys no matter what. No matter what defense they were playing, if they were winning or losing, if they were giving it their best, he supported our team. And what I want to propose to you is that while innovation does wonderful things, we cannot approach innovation like Mókollur approaches the national handball team. We do not just cheer for innovation because it's innovation, because of what it says in the ISO. We always have to ask, value for whom? And innovation for why? What is the specific value that this is creating for us? And to demonstrate that these questions are not just being asked by heterodox economics or Marxist critics, I like to pull one of the clearest thinkers that I know on this topic, Peter Thiel, who is one of the Silicon Valley ideologues who says the quiet parts out loud. And Peter Thiel has wonderful talks where he explains a little bit of what the ISO is defining for us, that value creation is an independent variable from value capture. That is to say, we can have businesses or organizations or people who create a lot of value, but they don't capture a lot of value. Their term sheet, their market cap, does not represent all the value they create. And I would like to add, you can have businesses, processes, people, organizations that capture a lot of value but don't create a lot of net value for most people. I want to illustrate this with two examples. Wikipedia has 7 million articles that are available for everyone free online in 342 languages. It creates immense value for humans. We've taken this for granted that we can look up the most obscure fact instantly for free. And we don't have to have the encyclopedia salespeople knock on our doors every 3 months like back in the 80s. But it captures very little value. The monetary value that Wikipedia takes per year is negligible compared to the immense value that it actually creates. And then we have organizations like Meta. I guess you know where I'm going. In my opinion, Meta capitalizes on, and this is partially an influence from Peter Thiel, the network effects, which gives them a monopoly over our social network, which means that if we want to invite our friends to this event, even if Meta's event system is kind of sucks, we have to do it through them because our friends are on there. And they know this, and this is their main business around. So they buy up competition, they do not have interoperability, they have an okay-ish platform for sharing things. You may like it, some people hate it, but that's not why we're there. Not because of the value they create, but because of the position they are in to capture value from all of us. Okay? So I want to propose that it's important for us when we think about innovation to keep in mind, at least this is my opinion, that economic growth cannot be equated with value for the vast majority of us. The market capitalization of Meta is not proportional to the actual value that it generates. And so I want to ask questions about our innovation ecosystem here, our support system, our ecosystem, the discourse that we have around this topic of innovation. This graph is from Rannis, and it shows public support for research and development. And the principal way that the state used to support research and development was through the Technology Development Fund, which you can see in green. And Technology Development Fund is sort of aligned with ISO's standard of innovation in that it asks for you to do something novel and something impactful. It kind of implies that it has to be impactful in a market sense, but it sort of opens the door for some value for users in Iceland. But as you can see, the Tech Development Fund is starting to be a footnote in how the Icelandic state supports innovation in this country. The biggest one is the blue column here, which is the rebates. They're sometimes called tax breaks or tax something, which is incorrect because it has nothing to do with paid tax by the entity claiming it. But it's the rebate for investment in research and development, which is that companies invest a certain amount of money in R&D, and then they get a little bit, quite a lot from it back from the state. And you can see why innovative companies, why startups, why investors love this, because you don't even have to ask a committee if it's a good idea. It just has to be R&D according to the regulations, and you would automatically get this if you comply. And as you can see, the private sector in Iceland has taken quite a lot of advantage of this, so that in 2025, 20 billion kronur are expected to go from the taxpayers' money into this type of support. And I am going to do what we call in Iceland to fall on the sword. As somebody who is an actor and a participant and sometimes work within this innovative and startup ecosystem, it is, of course, not going to be very popular to ask critical questions of this, because see how much money there is. I think it's wonderful that the state is supporting innovation and research and development. I think it's problematic if the main device it uses is these rebate devices, because by its nature, you will get from it as much as you can put into it. And what does this mean? It means that you will have to have something that can capture value, like Peter Thiel says, irrespectful of how much value you generate. This is not meant to make the next Wikipedia. It's meant to make the next Meta. And this is a problem. I also want to kind of talk a little bit, about the kind of language we use around innovation in this country and around Innovation Week, which is a wonderful event, which gives us opportunity to ask these questions. And you can see that, you can see this badge, can't you? And the biggest thing, the biggest font here says it's that I'm a startup, Humane is a startup. And how we define these things might not be a big deal for Innovation Week or for the sign-up form of that. And I'm not trying to pick on the wonderful organizers of this event. But this is increasingly apparent that we present certain boxes for innovation and others not. And so if you're signing up for buying a ticket, you can be a startup, you can be general, you can be an investor or student or media. So if you are a young person who is creative and wants to make something new and create something valuable, the message is that you can be a startup, well, if you're not an investor, okay? And if you are a startup, you have to define yourself with this radio box. And so what's striking about this to me, sure, again, not necessarily picking on the form, but kind of picking on the discourse, is that we define those startups in relation to venture capital. Are you pre-seed Series A, or are you not venture funded? So, or are you before venture funding? So it's kind of like the center stage is venture capital. And as a thought experiment, I thought back to some of the iconic innovators that I know, and I wondered what would happen if they would be signing up for Innovation Week. So I thought Margaret Hamilton, who worked on the Apollo guidance computer and defined the concept software engineering back in the 60s. If Margaret Hamilton was signing up for Innovation Week, what box would she tick? Would there be a box for her? She worked on a public program that was both funded and guided by NASA and the US government. Yet she contributed enormously to innovation. Linus Torvalds created Linux and Git, which are used on billions of devices today. Works for the Linux Foundation, a nonprofit. Would we have been better off if he had been taking those, defining himself as pre-seed back in the early 90s? I don't think so. World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee, who worked for CERN, a European research agency, and created the World Wide Web. Again, I said that twice. If CERN had this kind of a vulgar, I'm not saying that TTO, technology transfer offices, are vulgar, but if you had such a vulgar version of a TTO, they would have pushed them into making a startup out of the World Wide Web, that we would have to pay for using HTTPS or HTML or URL. Would we have a World Wide Web? Probably not. It wouldn't have been adopted. We would have something else. It wouldn't have been what it was. So when we define what innovation is, and Innovation Week is a wonderful moment to do that, let's be conscious of who we are calling in, who we're inviting, because there's young people coming into this space who might get the feeling that the boxes that they see is all the boxes there are. And so you might think from listening to what I'm saying that I think that venture capital is an unusable tool to create value for the vast amount of humans in the long term. And perhaps I do, but I'm not necessarily arguing that right now. That's another talk. But what I really want to warn us is that to the extent that venture capital can be useful to creating valuable things, it cannot be in the driver's seat. It cannot be the center. It cannot be what everything revolves around, because venture capital, by its definition, is going to be about capturing value and not necessarily creating it. Okay? And I am lucky enough to get to teach innovation to students in different disciplines, mostly not business students. And if, to the extent that the people here represent the innovation community, I want to warn all of us that young people who are critical, creative, eager to make a difference in the world, innovation is not a good word for many of them. I have to start by trying to get people to ease up and back down with their defense mechanism when they hear innovation, startups, or tech. And this morning we had the interesting, thought-provoking OK Bye event, where you saw a number of green tech companies complaining that the public and the politicians weren't open enough to them. And I want to say to people who are thinking that, the times have changed. Adding the adjective green to the word tech is not a ticket for everyone being open about what you're doing and welcoming you. That might have been a few years ago. So we can't present to the public this and say we're going to do this green to save the climate. Okay, thanks. Can I say a few more things, though? No, I mean, I don't know. I'm just about to finish. It's okay. Okay, so it's about the boxes we present. And this has been sort of our work with East of Moon, is to come up with new boxes. And as I saw from historical precedents, there are other boxes, there have been other boxes. Okay? And there are, maybe what we need is not more accelerators, but we need a decelerator, where we slow startups down. We get them to think and be more conscious about what they're doing, what effect it's having on them, on nature. Maybe we need a generator, which is proposed by Ariel Biri, which is opposed to the accelerator, where you bring in a product and then you try to find the market, and then you're kind of killed off really quickly. We need to start with a challenge and a real human need, and then start finding products, and then start going to the market with that once that's established. Maybe we need to work in missions, like Margaret Hamilton was doing when the Kennedy administration decided to go to the moon, thereby creating the foundations for the technical revolution that we have today. Maybe we need to think about the commons as a model to innovate, like Linux. And maybe we need to not support companies as much as more communities of innovation. But mostly we need to be open to inventing new boxes. We cannot just take the boxes that are on the form when we're signing up for the events or for the accelerators or what it is. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.